Hi guys, welcome back to your marketing crash course, and this week we are going to be talking about mapping the customer journey. And so we are going to go over the 5 stages that I have outlined that I personally think that would create a very cohesive marketing map for your customer journey. And this is super important because it tells a cohesive story of where your customers enter and where they end in your product, which will tell a very clear story for marketing, sales, support, and every aspect of your business to address. Now, the first stage that we're going to go over is setting clear objectives. Okay, so the first step is setting clear objectives. And this is not setting clear business objectives, this is setting clear objectives of your map itself. So you want to know, I'm sure there are many different ways and many purposes that a customer journey map can serve, whether it's email marketing, is it your product, is it for your solutions team, is it for sales, is it for support? There's so many routes that you can go and really use this for. Today we're going to be focusing on marketing, and so for our objective, this is going to be marketing, which I'll just put a little arrow here. And you want to ask yourself 3 main questions in this step. So, what do you want to accomplish? Who are you targeting? And what experiences do you want to highlight? Now, with all of these things, we are telling a more clear picture of what is to come in the journey, because this is going to influence what buyer personas you are targeting and what is the actual audience of this. If you're not clear, then your sales and solutions and product team might not be aware that this is a marketing focus. And so we don't want to be counterproductive with this customer map. We want to be very productive and very clear of what is the actual objective that we are trying to accomplish here. Okay, moving on, the next step is to collect data. Now this is super important because it is very easy to draw assumptions and conclusions that aren't actually factual. And so it is very important that we are justifying this map through actual customer data, because at the end of the day, this customer map journey is all about your customers. And so there are 2 types of data that you will want to include, which one is qualitative and the second is quantitative. Now, the way that I differentiate the 2, they sound very similar, but they are very different. Quantitative, you can think of quantity. And so this has everything to do with hard facts and numbers. So what do the numbers say? What do your charts say? So we can look at charts, we can look at data, and the main thing is looking at numbers. And then the other one is qualitative, so quality. And this has to do with what are your customers saying? Now you could address both of these in a number of ways. I think the main tactic that is very cheap and effective for gathering both of these pieces of data is surveys, which you could always send through email marketing, or you can send them to power users. You could have it as a pop-up, etc. The one thing with power users that you want to be careful with is you want to tell a very cohesive story, and you don't want this data to be skewed by people who really love your product. You also want to be talking to people who may not love your product or who are struggling with your product to tell a very clear story. And then another very important way that you can collect this information is through focus groups. Now, focus groups are larger in size and they require more time and more resources, because oftentimes your customers are going to want to be compensated for these things. So the downside about this is that they are time consuming and expensive. But you will uncover a lot of insights through talking to people and actually be able to feel their tone and their energy when they're describing something that you don't really get through a survey. And then the last one is interviews. Now, these are not focus groups. A focus group is a larger setting. I would say anywhere from 4 to 20 people. You'll probably want it to be around the 8 or 10 mark. But interviews are usually one-on-one. And so, as you can tell, these are going to be even more long and time-consuming and are going to have maybe a bit of a barrier to get a cohesive story like we're talking about, and making sure we're not just justifying our power users. Okay, now moving on to step 3, we are going to be defining our buyer personas. Now this is super important because after we completed step 2, which is all about collecting customer data, now we have a more clear picture of who our actual customers are. What do our power users look like? What do they have in common? What are the people who are coming in at a freemium? Who are the people that are churning? Now we have a very clear picture of what these people look like, and now it is time to define them in a buyer persona. Now, I think one of the most important parts about a buyer persona, especially for a SaaS software company, is making sure you are identifying your different personas' jobs to be done. Now, this shifts away from a traditional buyer persona perspective and really leans into what job are they hiring your software to complete for them. So, if I was a construction worker or just anyone who was doing renovations or trying to hang up a picture, for example, I am going to try and make a hole for this picture. Now, I have different options. I could hire a heavy object to put the nail in the wall, or I could hire a hammer to put a picture in the wall, to put a nail in the wall to hang a picture. Now, the important thing is I'm not hiring this hammer to be a hammer. I am hiring the hammer to nail in a nail to the wall. So to make a hole. That is the job that I am hiring this hammer to do. So now you need to think, what job is your customer hiring your product to complete? And what are the other things that they have hired this job to complete in the past? Why was it less effective than your product? Why maybe is it more effective than your product? And where do you fit in to this market? And how can you align yourself and position yourself for your customer to understand that your product is the best one to hire for their problem? Okay, now moving on to the 4th step, which is to define stages in the customer journey. And so we have 4 critical stages that our customers go through when making a decision to adopt a product into their daily life. So we have awareness, consideration, decision, and retention. Now, awareness, let's talk about that. That is basically when someone is aware that they have a problem that they need to solve. Then they move into the consideration phase where they are considering different options that they can hire to complete their job, like we mentioned in the last section. Then they go into their decision phase. After they have done all of their research and have found a product that speaks to them, speaks to their pains and their needs, then they will decide on which option they are going to choose as their solution. And then finally, retention. This is when people are using your product, they're becoming power users, they're activated, and this new solution is integrated into their daily life. And so in defining the stages of the customer journey, you want to know exactly what happens at each stage and also what emotions and pains or pain points your customers are experiencing at these stages, because this will influence everything, especially in marketing, which is what we're talking about in this video. Is if you understand the emotions and pains that your customers are experiencing at each stage, then you can speak to them. So if you know that people are going to your homepage in the consideration phase the most, then your homepage should address their emotions and pains that they're experiencing with their jobs to be done. And so with this framework, everything is strategically aligned to position your product as the best solution for your ideal customer or your buyer persona. If it's not, then it's really based off nothing, and you're kind of just throwing darts in the dark and hoping something that lands and sticks, which there is a much more strategic way to go about this, and that is all talked about at stage 4. All right, congratulations. Once you have made it through all of these steps, you are basically done, and the only thing left is to put all of the pieces together in a very cohesive diagram. This is super important so that you can share your learnings not only for yourself, and so you have a complete picture of what you just did and all the hard work that you put in, but to also share this information with the rest of your organization. Because even if this is thought through of more of a marketing perspective, it is inevitably going to be helpful for other sectors of the company. And so some tools that I personally have found super helpful are Lucidchart and FigJam. Now, I actually just completed one of our customer journey maps recently, and the tool that I used was Lucidchart. Now, I just want to speak on this app just a little bit because I thought that it was super helpful. They have a great free tier if you don't want to pay for a subscription to complete this task. And there's lots of different options that can make it very custom, or they have different templates that can also help you out and help you get started with very low effort. So yeah, I have not yet explored FigJam, but I have heard of it come up in some other videos. But I do have experience using Lucidchart, and I would highly recommend trying it out if you are trying to, start your customer journey map and document all of it to share to not only yourself, but also your team.